Hello, I'm Karen Carnabucci of the Lancaster School of Psychodrama and Experiential Psychotherapies. And I am super happy, super excited, very excited to talk to Suzi Tucker today, who is one of the best known constellation teachers that I know of literally in the world today, honestly. And so what I'm very happy about is that she will be coming to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, October 6 to 11 to do a 1 week retreat. So we're talking today to learn a little bit more about family constellations directly from Suzi Tucker and why family constellations and intergenerational trauma and ancestors are important right now. Welcome.
Hey, Karen. So I just want to let you know and let people know what an honor it is to actually be invited by you. We have been distant colleagues for a long time who meet at various junctures um, throughout throughout the time that I've been involved in constellations and that you have. Um, I We met last at Omega, and when you invited me to do this, my first thought was yes. So that wasn't actually a thought, it was a reflex. Um, I have to say, throughout my life, my first reflex has always been no. And one of the things that I really kind of learned from and with constellation is for the instinct to be yes, because then it can be shaped. And if the instinct is no, it's deeply protective even from the good things. So anyway, my instinct was to say yes, and then I began thinking about what a beautiful opportunity to kind of join forces with you and to allow our communities to come together in a certain way, and not only through you and me, but for them to share their brilliance, which I think is the kind of crux of constellation work. It really looks to this collective collaboration, even when it's not spoken. It just is.
I love that you say collective collaboration because I've been thinking those are the words of today.
Yes, I agree. And they're the ones that are, I think we have to remind ourselves, because in these uh, shocking moments, right? We're shocked, even though, of course, this moment has a lineage, and many of us have been going along like this in our little bubbles with a whole lot of assumptions that things are okay, or it's happening over there, or whatever. And the world is pressing in on everybody at this point. And those words, collective collaboration, assume a kind of autonomy and also connection, right? We are not one mind. We are not the same. We share the human condition. Can we make room for one another, or must we retreat into that instinctual sense of separation? It's a good question, and it's an unfolding question. And this work, family constellation work, comes out of this moment only years ago, right? A similar fractured moment where nobody could pretend that everything was okay, and where separation seemed to be, for many, for most, to be the protective mechanism. And what feels possible now and difficult possible and difficult is that coming together, collaborating with one another might feel safer, might feel more generative, less destructive if we can uh, let that fuel our imaginations first and begin to guide our actions. Separation is easy. It is my temptation to hate. That's very tempting to me. To dismiss, to have disdain for, it's very tempting for me. And perhaps it's the first thing that comes into my head. And what I've learned is to try to make room for the other of me and the other out there.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It occurs to me that before we go on too far, we need to identify what family constellations is, because some people watching this video will know exactly what it is, and other people will go, what? What is that? I am guessing, but I could be wrong, that your definition has changed through the years. So how would you define family constellations right now?
So first of all, you're exactly right. I don't think about it that much because there's not a hard and there's not a juncture at which I can say, oh, it changed there. It because it's a living philosophy, it has changed over time. And because I took Bert Hellinger really at his word in the beginning that I um, meet people where they are versus try to bring them to me in a sense, it shifts because everybody contributes all along the way. So I'll define it, uh, you know, I could use 1,000 words and still people will say, you know me, Karen, what the fuck? There is that quality to constellation. Um, so I'm going to just define it by the kind of essential gift. Constellation is a process and a philosophy, and they work together. So one of the shifts over time for me has been that many things can be defined as constellation because it describes a kind of meeting of the mind and heart and spirit. Constellation looks to move out of the dyadic relationship of first me and me, where my problems are understood only in terms of what I have done and not done, even what has happened to me and not happened to me. If I define my problems in that way, my obstacles, my challenges in that way, I am left to fix everything myself and sometimes to lean very hard into the people I connect with to help me. There is not enough ground in that image to actually find solution or reconciliation that has endurance because the diagnosis is too narrow, therefore the resolution is too limited. Constellation opens the map. And I see in my head, some of you may be too young to know what a map is. Imagine a paper map. Imagine your GPS screen, right? I open the map toward the back, not to dwell there, but to begin to pull in the threads that actually fueled or fed into the limited sense that I have of myself in the world. My problems have a lineage. My resolutions also have a lineage. Just saying that and knowing it for myself for the 8,000th time brings me a kind of dual sensibility that actually impacts the future. It brings relief.
Mhm.
All the bad things about me, they have a lineage. And all that I try to access also has a lineage. I am accompanied in both ways. Brings relief, and with relief, a sense of capacity for doing things differently in the future. So now I'm out of the crease of the map where I am squished and where I am in a constant cycle of, oh no, again, this thing we call resilience. And then again, right? I'm out of that crease where everything is back and forth or all around. And I'm moving into the larger landscape behind me and beginning to imagine that it mirrors a larger landscape in front of me. So constellation out pictures first my challenge. So I come to you and I tell you that I have chronic problems with money. My joke is I like to choose something that nobody relates to. And I think to myself, what an idiot I am. I make this money and then I immediately get rid of this money. Either I give it away or I spend it on things that are fleeting or I make bad investments. Somehow I get rid of it. In the crease of the map, what an idiot I am. Now I'm better, now I'm worse, now I'm better, now I'm worse. When I open this map and I look at the lineage and meaning of money in the family system from which I come, I see that several generations back, for instance, just for instance, several generations back, somebody gained through the loss of somebody else. In other words, I have a great grandfather who acquired property in a way that was unethical or illegal or immoral from somebody else. They lost everything. My great grandfather got everything. Imagine that when I bring in people or even objects to represent this larger map, that me, several generations down, who says, I didn't even know my great grandfather. Oh, wait. I know him in two ways. In my body, because he lives right in me, in my cells. In my cells. This is not woo-woo. He lives in my cells. And I know him dynamically through the language of the family and its attitude toward money.
Mhm.
And now this bringing in money because I can and getting rid of it has a meaning that goes back, perhaps a word like atonement.
Mhm.
Perhaps I have the unconscious knowledge, not belief, the unconscious knowledge that I don't deserve what I make. We set this up so that we create a three-dimensional portrait of my source material, my content. physical, mental, psychological, spiritual, dynamic, all the things. And now I look to my great grandfather, perhaps, and I move into the connection that I have with him out of the covert into the overt, out of what's underground informing me, surfacing it, and finding some sort of reconciliation with him. And as he is represented in me. So out there and in here. And I begin to imagine changing my sentence, both my spoken sentence of I don't deserve, I must atone for, and my prison sentence, I don't deserve, I must atone for. And now perhaps I am released from that contract so that I can actually agree to some new ideas. Like I make the money, I do something good with it, which includes caring for me. Doesn't exclude, includes. So family constellation is simple in a way, a three-dimensional portrait of our content, where we come from, what we are entangled in, and is complex because our systems are complex. And because our systems always touch other systems, we influence and are influenced by. Can I say one other thing?
Go ahead.
As I open the map in front of me, I begin to actually shift possibilities for descendants I don't even know, and not necessarily biological, people I touch, people I teach, right? So that they don't have to be caught in his experience through me. I have found greater freedom. They can have greater freedom, right? His missteps, his limitations don't have to be the primary information for the future.
Well said. I found that when you said that one sentence, and I know the healing sentences that we offer in Constellation are very succinct. And for me, that one sentence, my problems have a lineage, I noticed I took a breath.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'll say that I use the phrase seed sentences. And the reason I use that phrase is because I do feel like in that breath that you took, that that is a seed in the ground, that something new can sprout from or blossom from. We may not know what it is, right? We don't get to know that sometimes, but I do always get to plant the seed. So I am always looking for what are the deep sentences beneath the problem, the seed sentences. So I love that. You took a breath.
Yeah. So I'm looking here at my notes because I have some questions that I want to remember to ask you. One of the things I'm noticing, and I've been around family constellations since 2001. And one of the things I'm noticing that today, here in 2025, there's a great deal of talk about intergenerational trauma, ancestral healing that was not present way back when, right? It's almost become a trendy thing to talk about.
Yeah.
And then I get interested in what is genuine healing around the ancestral lineage and what is not as genuine, and how do people tell the difference between the trendy talk and the real deal?
Mm. Well, I'm glad you asked me such an easy question. Um, um, so, those of us who go back to 2001 have an advantage, I think, in certain ways, because Bert Hellinger was no bullshit, right? And he was really not trendy.
Mm.
Um, and in fact, he got into a lot of trouble sometimes because he was so not trendy. He wasn't looking to placate, which is not to say he was perfect. He was a man, right? He was a very smart man, and he was, to my lights, a very good friend and a wonderful teacher. He was a human being, first and foremost. That feels very important. He was on the ground. He was not in the sky, right? Um, and what I would say is that any reconciliation that does not allow for taking responsibility is some sort of bypass, right? So, we have this phrase, spiritual bypass. We have so many phrases, it's, toxic positivity, all of these things, but I actually think that they have truth in them, right? And I will say that I have seen constellation bypass, right? And what that really means is that um, the feeling of healing, just the word or the phrase itself, is a rather esoteric feeling, and it's often a fleeting feeling. I feel super great in the workshop, and then it wears off like aspirin, and now I no longer feel great, right? So it's not so much, for me, the difference is it's not so much the feeling of, and I don't even use the word healing.
Mhm.
I'm not looking for healing because I don't know what it is. I think for you, it's one thing, for me, it's another thing, and it's many things over time, right? What I am really looking for in a family system, when I work with a client who um, smokes or is in a terrible marriage or always feels sad, whatever it is, right? It doesn't really matter to me what it is, or is a perpetrator of some sort, right? I want to include things that are difficult even for us, challenging for us. Um, when I stand with somebody and I am looking sort of at the three-dimensional portrait of their content, of their source material, I am looking for the pathways that actually lead to greater freedom. I am only looking for freedom. I'm looking for freedom to, not just freedom from,
Mhm.
but freedom to. So if in our trendiness, in our rituals, in our cool phrasing, what we have is momentary freedom from, I would say that's not enough. It might be a good business plan because you keep coming back to me because you really like that feeling, but it's really not enough for life, right? What we really want is the idea of freedom from moving right into freedom to, because that actually sets the tone for reciprocity with life. Freedom to truly moves us out of the field of, for instance, the slave masters. If I have to keep getting free from that field, they are my North Star. Always. Mother, Nazis, slave masters, father, perpetrator, whatever that is, if I have to keep getting free, they continue to be my North Star. What is behind me is right in front of me as well. Freedom to create, contribute, generate, small, big, I don't care. I don't care if people are begin to cook for themselves or they join the Peace Corps. That idea of measuring is not important to me. It is the sense that I will use my life toward, not just away from, right? That is moving out of those old fields and actually disempowering in this moment toward the future those difficult forces that swooped in and changed everything. So to me, intergenerational healing must include my greater sense of capacity and freedom to do something generative. Lots of seeds, some seeds, 1,000 seeds, that part doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But it is an orientation toward the more versus a repeated orientation toward limitation, right?
So we give birth to a new reality.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you for answering that very complicated question.
Loved it.
Yes, that is good to hear, good to know, good to hold that perspective. So I'm interested in a question that you talked about earlier with me, where you said that people often ask you, when I attend your retreat or your workshop, or whatever you call them, I call them retreats, will I learn enough that I can take what I learn back into my own practice? Because we know that family constellations, it's complicated, right? It's not something you learn in a weekend or a week. And will people be able to take nuggets, enough nuggets, back home to their actual workplaces and practices?
So in a way, it's another complicated question only because it depends on some level, I suppose, on the person and their habit of getting, right? Their habit of taking, their habit of getting. And some people are in wide habits, right? And it's a beautiful thing. It's generous space. Um, I don't make much of a distinction between personal and professional work because being my own case study, I know that the places where I had and continue to have on some level, I suppose always, blind spots in my own personal uh, constellation, my own personal system, and my own personal sense of capacity and responsibility. Those blind spots directly impact the work that I do. And the work that I do, because I always learn as much as I teach, comes back into my personal life in a good way. And there is this extraordinary give and take. So the lines are not hard and fast. That's the first thing. Second thing is constellation is primarily a lens. And I would say in every week I've ever taught, people come back to me and say, hey, even before they're out of the retreat, right? This just happened at Omega. Somebody said to me, I've already used this lens. And I think that's because the work is not competitive. So you're a psychotherapist, you're a psychiatrist. You're a Reiki master. You're just beginning to study somatic experiencing. You're a Gestalt therapist, right? And Family Constellation and Bert Hellinger, its founder, and me, a teacher, look at all of those things as wow, beautiful, important, a part of, not apart from, right? So the idea that this lens and some of the actual mechanisms, because it does have mechanisms, can be folded in immediately because you already know them, right? Um, is so important to me because I feel like I'm always teaching. And when I look out, I think I am actually teaching emissaries who will bring the work further than I possibly can, both because they're in communities that I am not, and because they have a kind of brilliance that I do not have. And I'm easy with that. So, yes, there is the lens, and then there are specific mechanisms, prompts in a way, that people can fold right into the work that they do. One of the things, just thinking about therapy, because I teach a lot of therapists, and I usually learn it later that they're psychotherapists. I just learned somebody, I actually had no idea what she did for a living, and she mentioned, she was like, oh, I'm a psychotherapist. And I was not surprised that she could do that, but it just never kind of floated across my screen. Anyway, um, that if you think about the therapists imagining that they have greater capacity and connection, that can only be a good thing. When I set up constellations, one of the things that I love doing is asking people who their resources are. And I'm not just talking about Aunt Molly. I'm talking about the therapist they've been seeing for 5 years. I bring that person into the constellation as an aspect of my client. And I am on a team with that person. I had just a quick, funny little tale in my last workshop. A woman said to me, as people often say, I love constellation, but, and I'm like, yes, but, but I went to 6 facilitators before you, and I'm very happy to be here. So that's like amazing, like elevator to the top floor and then directly to the basement, right? So what do I do as a facilitator? I sit back and I look at her and I take the time to bring in the other 6 facilitators and I join them on a team rather than going with the dispensing of them. I join them on a team and now I am mobile. Now I am mobile. Um, I think there are many things to learn. And I think that there are many things that we can fold in immediately because we come educated. I am not under the impression you can't use any of this work until you get your certificate from this, that, or the other. You are already doing work. You're already doing your good work. And constellation is a way to open into new possibility and to fortify you so that you don't burn out. Right? Constellation is, I think, very important with regard to therapist burnout, by the way. Um, so that's a long rambling. Yes, you will take something.
That's good to know. And
Yeah.
I know that for myself because I know that I see the world with different glasses if I'm holding the constellation philosophy
Yeah. Yeah.
and the way I look at my people that I work with, the way I look at my own life. truly has changed with my own work in constellations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like you teach what you learn and you learn what you teach,
That
right?
is the truth. Yeah. So I want to ask you before we close, Suzi, is there anything else that you feel very important to say that I have not asked, or something you want to double punctuate?
Double punctuate. Boom, boom.
Boom.
I well, I'm going to go back to the beginning. First of all, that I really love being in collaboration with you. I'm aware of your lineage and I'm aware of your weight, and I feel very honored is this word we kind of spit out in a rather perfunctory way sometimes, but I mean it, that it's a deep honor, lowercase h maybe, right? Um, and that there's something about our bringing together people, communities that it's a little bit of a Montessori method, Karen. I think there is what I give, and I do give a lot, um, even though I never think I give enough, and maybe that's from my system, right? But I get to express, and I get to connect, and then that comes back to me. So that part is true. But you know what happens behind my back is really the beauty of the retreat. That people find their belonging in these circles, not predicated upon worshiping the same God, dressing the same way, having the same background, and this sense of belonging that people tap into in a circle over 5 days shifts a state of being in the world. And going back to what you said in the very beginning, as the world presses in, this sense of belonging is the opposite of panic, opposite of terror, opposite of passivity. It is where courage comes from, right? So I always say that I clearly have a preacher in my background somewhere. I haven't
That's
found them
beautiful.
yet.
That's beautiful, where courage comes from. Well, this has been wonderful to talk to you. I am very much looking forward to seeing you and hosting you on, what is it, October 6 to 11 here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
In
And
the
we will
beautiful
be in
fall.
touch, of course.
In the beautiful fall. In the
It's a
beautiful fall.
beautiful fall. October is very nice this time of year here in Lancaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really look forward.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Karen.